Australians have stopped to observe a minute's silence on this Remembrance Day at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, commemorating those who have died in war. Our reporters are following the ceremonies today as the nation does mark 103 years since the end of World War I. We begin our coverage in Canberra. Trudy McIntosh is at the War Memorial. Trudy, it was a scaled-back national ceremony we saw today.
It certainly was, Ash. Compared to what we saw this time last year, they were able to have 500 guests now compared to just 200 last year. Canberra putting on its finest weather for this Remembrance Day on the 103rd anniversary of the end of the First World War. We saw today the Governor-General, David Hurley, the Chief of Defence Force Angus Campbell, both of them leading the tributes and laying a wreath on the here behind me. In terms of the other symbolic part of today, it is the 80th anniversary of the opening of the Australian War Memorial. Fitting, therefore, that War Memorial Director Matt Anderson delivered the commemorative address here. He's a former ambassador to Afghanistan, and he chose to reflect on the end of that war, the fact that it ended just a few months ago after 20 long years. Many people, including veterans of that war, watched the messy withdrawal from Kabul and questioned whether the sacrifice had been worth it. Here was Matt Anderson's response to that.
My response that day to the young man with old eyes was that he and multiple Australian contingents had left behind an enviable reputation. Our enemies feared them, our allies revered them, and those Afghans that we worked with most closely in Uruzgan and in Kandahar asked for the Australians to return. Albert Einstein once said, "Not everything that counts can be counted."
The Prime Minister today has also reflected on the legacies of Afghanistan. He spent the day in Melbourne now the Victorian border is open. He was actually side by side with Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews, both of them at the Shrine of Remembrance in Melbourne and both laying wreaths on this Remembrance Day. I think the Prime Minister went out of his way this morning, Ash, to talk about the legacy, the need to support veterans going forward. So it's something not just on this day that the government and Labor both want to make sure is front of mind.
Trudy, thank you. And yes, we will be speaking to an Australian injured badly in Afghanistan shortly. Danica DeGiorgio is with us from the Cenotaph in Sydney CBD. Danica, the rain held out for the service?
Ash, despite the forecast of heavy rain, it held out for the duration of the event here at Martin Place this morning, and it was a solemn service compared to last year, which was marred by coronavirus restrictions. Today's event could be attended by any member of the public on the condition that when they enter, they must check in using a QR code and show proof of vaccination status. It was attended by hundreds of members of the public, as well as dignitaries, including the Premier Dominic Perrottet and Governor of New South Wales Margaret Beazley, as well as other important members. Today, though, Afghanistan and Iraq veterans were invited to attend. We caught up with Peter Rutland, a sergeant who served in Afghanistan. In 2010, he was injured in a helicopter crash as it was flying to a base in Afghanistan, and Peter suffered brain and muscular injuries. This is, of course, the first Remembrance Day since that war ended, and Peter told us that despite the fact that that war has ended, the scars remain.
Australians are very resilient people who just get on with the job. You know, we went through World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, and it's still the same. Nothing changes. The amount of casualties will always be the same, but the burden that hits our soldiers and their families and the Australian public will always remain.
This morning at dawn, poppies were projected onto the sails of the Sydney Opera House as the bugle played at Circular Quay. Ash, certainly a very solemn and fitting service today. And as I said, compared to last year, at least the public got to attend to say thank you, and lest we forget.
Yeah, good to see. Danica, appreciate the update. Thank you.